Welcome to The Disruption Is Now. Join us on this enlightening journey as we explore how AI is impacting our jobs, careers, lives, and the human experience. Each episode, host Greg Matusky will converse with visionaries and innovators at the forefront of AI, diving into its challenges, opportunities, and impact. So buckle up as we venture into the heart of disruption, and together, let's unfold the future.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Disruption Is Now, the podcast where we talk all things AI. And I'm really excited about our next guest. I met him a couple years ago through an international network of PR agencies. His firm is in France, and he shared my early excitement about AI more than anyone I had ever met in the public relations game. And he saw all the potential behind it and kind of subordinated all the risks and the negativity about it to what could be. So I'd like to welcome my guest. It's Thibaut Poulin, and he is the managing director of Cap and Kime. It's a PR agency in France. Did I say that right, Thibaut?
This is Cap PR, and
I'm so sorry. I got the name wrong after you went through it. Names are tough with me. I don't know about you, but it's the one real low point of my expertise. But it's great to have you here, all the way from your office in Paris.
Thanks for having me, Greg. Always a pleasure to talk with you about next innovation and generative AI, generally speaking.
And let's talk a little bit about your firm and the kind of business you do. I know it, probably the audience does not know that, but tell me a little bit about the PR firm.
Sure. So we do PR in the widest sense of the term, including all the kind of influence and audiences, including sometimes politicians, media, of course. Different stakeholders, basically, including unions. We are relying on all the influence lever to make our client achieve their goals, basically in terms of influencing the landscape.
And so, you were first introduced to artificial intelligence, AI, in the form of generative AI. When did it really hit you?
Certainly, the first light bulb moment for us came when ChatGPT popped up in media, basically. And as a PR and having a strong tech pillar in the agency, with clients such as Intel or this kind of pips, we have jumped on it for a discovery session with this specific team, so we can collectively test and learn and imagine what we could potentially do with it. And one of
what was that, like 10 years? Oh, no, it was 6 months ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, 6 months ago, literally. A little bit more. Actually, this was the end of 2022, November or December. I cannot remember. So
it seems like the Stone Age now, doesn't it?
Sure. And absolutely the Stone Age, because it has evolved in such a tremendous way in the last 6 months. And even in terms of our use, one of the very first instance where we used it, and I remember it just like if it was 6 months ago, actually, we were grappling with the challenge of processing vast amounts of data or message for coverage analysis and reports. Basic PR mission in every single agency across the world. And it became then evident that Gen AI could not only process this data and message swiftly, but also identify patterns and insight that human might overlook at some point. And the spark was ignited by the realization that Gen AI could amplify our capabilities or provide a more comprehensive understanding of our clients' results. That was the very basic. And when I see what we are doing today with Gen AI in the agency, I could not tell that it was 6 months ago.
Well, let's go into that. And how's it transformed your agency currently, and what buckets are you using it for?
Basically, I would not say that it has transformed the agency. That would not reflect any reality. But because we are still testing and learning, and quite cautiously, actually, because we need to be cautious in terms of ethics, the way we do. And as French people, we need to first regulate before then doing things. This is probably a cultural difference that we have with the US. Um, so it's still on process and ongoing, and we are testing on more and more tools. Whatever its content development, it came quite directly after reporting and all the very basic mission in the PR agency remit. Content development, it happened 2 months after we tested for the first time, and then we went into more complex content, such as research, for instance. Imagine the number of hours spent by a PR team when it comes to analyze a whole research and make it a simple press release. That's literally 6 to 7 hours approximately. As when you entered all the data in ChatGPT or any other platform, it will take about 10 minutes to get a proper exact summary.
And we're using that a lot too for summarization. We just did a survey within the firm, and I think summarization of information provided by the client, with all safeguards in place, obviously, but summarization really came up high, probably the fifth or sixth most used process for generative AI. And that can be a lot of things. I mean, it could be a survey where you just get the bulk data and you can probe it in natural language and say, what's surprising about this data to you? Or give me 5 headlines that you think
Exactly.
press. Or I'm a reporter. Now tell me what is newsworthy in this data set, which is just mind blowing. And again, I'm sure we could have gotten to that and teased it out, as you were saying, as human beings, but the time commitment could have been much greater, and much more involved. And really, is that what we want to be doing? Do we want to be data analysts, or we want to be storytellers? And
And
I think,
actually, both. To be honest, to
right,
be a good storyteller, you should be a great data analyst first, because all the data driven stories are now kind of a religion for media. And not this is only talking about media relation, but if you are not able to provide any data driven story, that doesn't work simply.
right. So it's been terrific on that. We find content is now table stakes in that we've managed to socialize to a large degree the use of generative AI for content development with good results. These are never perfect results, as you know. These aren't something that can just be necessarily sent out to the ether or given to the client. These are things that need human intervention and editing and consideration. But still, that jump start, the ability to start with less than more than a blank screen that often.
Exactly. And that makes things really easier, because actually the first draft that you and I would consider as imperfect, still, this is a good junior staff member work, which would have taken about 2 to 3 hours.
Go right there. Stay right there for a moment. Where do you think it's impacting? What level of professional within your firm do you think it's impacting the most?
So the most today, at the current state of the art, where we stand with AI in the agency, definitely junior people. Junior people missions is all about reporting, summarizing, translating, localizing, and pitching the journalist. So now, what I'm trying to do with my junior pips is telling, spend less hour doing the basic mission where no value added, just like reporting. This is no value added, and concentrate, focus your attention on pitching the media and create human trusted relationship with them, because this is where we do have an impact and where we cannot just be disrupted by AI.
You're right. I mean, that human element, being able to touch the media with important stories, where I think it can. One thing we're finding generative AI does a very poor job on this side of the ocean is with building media pitches. It just doesn't come out as thoughtful or specific or data oriented as you need it. At least that's our experience. I think firm wide, if I said that, everyone would agree with me. And I really trace it back to the training set, right? The correspondence we have with the media is private. You can't really get to that. So it's never been trained on it. So when you here, I've noticed if you say pitch, it'll give you an ad. You have to say, reverse it sometimes. We'll reverse it and say, I'm a reporter. I'm looking for a story. That gets better. But really, what we found with pitching is it triggers some ideas maybe that we can build off of. And some of these ideas, sometimes we dismiss simple ideas that we think, oh, everyone knows that because we're in the weeds with our clients, deep in the trenches. And it could be a very valuable story. Sometimes it turns up things you wouldn't expect. For instance, we had a cybersecurity client recently, and we asked it for trends in cybersecurity. And there were 10 of them, and 9 of them were very obvious. One of them said, it brought up the fact of after a hack, fraudsters move into companies and they go to their clients and say they're the company. They pretend to be the company and they're going to help them secure their personal information, and they solicit and get their personal information. That was something that was a little bit new to us. We had never really pitched that on the cyber side, and it worked very effectively. But from a list of 10 dogs, we got one gem from it. And that didn't write it for us. We still had to write it and pitch it. So I don't know what your experience has been. Has it been similar, or are you more advanced than what we've been able to?
That's very similar. And my next steps, considering that, is that we should be able in the next months to create literally not a one-to-few story for journalists, but a one-to-one story, a personalized story fitting his editorial line, and just for him to get the perfect fit in terms of pitching.
Go into that more, because that's a very important point, Thibaut. And I think for our industry, what was once mass media is now very fragmented, and
Exactly.
there's more need for customization. Go talk a little bit more about that and what you're seeing.
My idea on that is that the journalists have more and more difficulties to differentiate each other, one to each other, in terms of editorial line, because they are telling the same stories all day long in every single media. Considering our expertise in terms of PR, we are able to describe into ChatGPT an editorial line in quite a fine-tuned way. And then asking ChatGPT to create a specific pitch fitting this editorial line with this angle on this client.
Well, that's interesting. You would know this. The world doesn't know. We're working on some AI tools in cooperation with a company here, Newsprint, which, in full disclosure, is owned by my son. And that's specifically what it's meant to do, where it will aggregate news, trends, breaking news. It will identify your client in those news as a monitoring feature. But more than that, it will then pop up derivative stories that play off what's happening that might not be the main story that's being so over-reported, but is customized by the channel and the reporter and what we know they're reporting.
Exactly. And that means that you then increase your relevancy, not only for your client, but also for the journalist. Because as a PR professional, I've always considered myself as the middleman. We are right in the middle of the relation between these different stakeholders.
Yeah, and that relationship is only important if you can provide real information for the reporter. I mean, look, I've been at this a long time, and literally, Thibaut, there was a point where I would go to New York once a week, and I would sit down with reporters at coffee shops and talk about what they're working on. Those days are gone. They don't have time to do it.
Exactly.
Newsrooms have been hollowed out. And now what they want is, what is the story? What are the facts? Can I rely on this being accurate, interesting, and authoritative in some way? Can I get access to people and ideas and data that I couldn't get otherwise. The days of whining and dining the media are so far in the rearview mirror, and what we have now is the opportunity, as you said, to customize those pitches and those approaches by what's going on in the world today. This is beyond newsjacking. This is really trying to figure out where derivative stories will take place from a major event in some way, so that you can come in after the fact or the day after and add value to it. We see this particularly in financial services, which we do a lot. So, for instance, the interest rates might increase tomorrow. Well, everyone's going to cover that, but what does that mean to the automotive industry, or what does that mean to any kind of, my client who does college financing for students or things like that? Those are the kinds of things that I think it's going to really allow us to take a customized approach to all of this. So where do you think this is all going, Thibaut?
Good question. It goes in my first response on that would be it goes where we bring it actually. But for me, the next stage is I talked about the basic mission that generative AI can easily replace. That's the point for each and everybody. Now I need that the next stage would be something like more advanced in terms of capability and going more into counsel and strategic mission that PR agencies have. And just as an example, I tested an AI-based messaging session, and it was all about repositioning a brand on the market in terms of communication, not only PR, but also marketing, redefining the branding and the messaging of the whole company. And I took my computer with me because getting the AI is as simple as getting a PC finally. So I took my PC in the room and I literally did the same way I usually do. So hosting the session and having the different people from the company talking about the brand, the history, the company, the figures, the fact, and blah, blah, blah. But I was prompting at the same time with the keyword they were giving to me. And then when I came back to the office after the session, I did exactly what I do usually. So having my messaging grid, putting all the key message, the umbrella message, the supporting message. And I took the whole stuff, putting into ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, imagine you are the CMO of this company and create a signature for this brand in 2 words. He offered me dozens of options. I selected one. I pushed it. I declined it with different stories, a marketing story, a product story, a financial story about the company. Using this kind of message, I pushed it directly to the client saying, hey, as I mentioned, I used AI during our session, and the day after, here is the results. What you think?
Stop. Let me ask you something about that, right? That level of transparency with the client, wasn't that scary? Were they going to
No,
find less value in you?
I'm completely comfortable in doing that because first, for us and for me particularly, transparency is paramount. We cannot pretend to do a proper job without any transparency in our jobs, because we would lose the trust of our client, but also from the media when we are talking to media. So not being transparent is not an option. Our policy dictates that we always disclose whenever generative AI is used as part of the strategy, the content development, and so on. This transparency builds trust and maintain ethical practices into the job. And then the surprise is that clients appreciate knowing the role of generative AI in our job, because sometimes, and quite often, I must admit, they have never tested it on their own. So it's kind of still kind of a curiosity. They are not
So
talking
you
about
gain
disruption or less value added. They are they finally find that our value added is also to educate them about generative AI potential.
so you found three levels of value for the client there. One is you delivered a quality work product, which in the end is most
In a
important.
timely
Second,
manner.
in a timely manner. Right, right. Good point. Second, you help them learn, right? You assumed a more consultative role because you brought them something they didn't know how to do this, if I'm hearing you right.
Yeah, yeah.
And then third, you established yourself as an expert because your ability to do that on the fly is a very impressive skill set that I'm convinced that I often said, look, if a company can do what we do, they should do it themselves, right? I mean, it's that simple. There's a reason there's specialization in the economy. So that brings me to the question of fee income and whether, and I think we share the answer on this, but I want to hear it from you. Um, how does this threaten our revenue stream if these tools are readily available and you can do a branding exercise in hours as opposed to perhaps days or weeks?
The fact is that the value that we historically put in our job is hours and the price per hour. This cannot be the case anymore because of generative AI and technology potential that we put in our job. So we need to put some value added outside of that. And what I guess, and this is a guess, but this is confirming along the months of use of generative AI in our job. The value that we add is still the same than we used to had along the year in my career. This is first trusted human relationship, and this is the way our brains of communicators are thinking. And we just use Gen AI as a tool to make it easier and faster. But that doesn't turn the way we think usually as communicators and the smartness that we could bring in the table when we are talking.
I, sometimes I wonder whether we're not, you and I and those who are good communicators aren't gaming the system because we make it look so easy. Because I do think our brains know where we want the message to go, and
Mm-hmm.
and I was a writer originally in my life. That's what I did. I was a business writer for magazines, and for years I struggled with the words. Right, that was always the, let's call it, the
Seeking the
information
right tone,
data.
the right word.
Right, right. And as I wrote more, I became my neuro pathway became better with and more facile in being able to use words. And then I developed, I really believe, a different neuro pathway, which allowed me to see what the message should be in the end. And then by continually doing this, and this is just my theory of neuroscience, they started to connect. So I could use the information for intelligence, right? And I really believe we're moving from an age of information, of words and data, to intelligence, where we want the message to be, where we want the outcome to be. And that took years to develop. And what I'm most excited about is I go to my colleagues, my teammates, and I say, I think I can now jumpstart it for you. I think I can get you away from worrying about the information and really focused on the messaging, something that took me 3.5 decades to develop. I now can give as a gift. And I've tried many times in my own business, Thibaut, to teach writing. And it was always a frustrating undertaking because still you can show somebody how to kick a soccer ball all you want. But until that person kicks a soccer ball 10,000 times, it's all for naught. So that's what I'm excited about. And I know you share my excitement. I want to thank you for being here
No,
today.
very welcome. It's always my pleasure.
It's always for me, it's invigorating to speak with you and to gain insights. The more we share, as I often say, there is no rule book, there is no textbook, there is no college class right now where you can learn all these things. We can only do it by sharing with one another And I thank you for sharing your thoughts today. And I hope to see you in person very soon, maybe next year in Spain somewhere.
I cannot believe it won't be before.
Okay. Great seeing you. Have a great day.
Great to see you.
Bye-bye.
This podcast is a production of Gregory FCA. If you enjoyed our discussion today and want to continue exploring the transformative power of AI, please check out more episodes and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.